Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nature Source Care. My name is Dr. Funda Goldman. I'm a naturopathic physician. In today's talk, I was going to discuss how to build Ojas, which is a concept from Ayurveda, which is a traditional Indian medicine more than 5,000 years old. So, building Ojas basically stems from the concept of rejuvenation for vitality and immunity. So, you can think of it as Ayurvedic rejuvenation. All right. So, let's take a look at what we got here today. Note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. For any symptoms that persist or worsen, please consult with a qualified medical professional. It's always best to determine the root cause of any disease and to develop a comprehensive treatment plan. While natural medicine remedies can be very effective, they may not be appropriate for everyone or as a single therapy, and it may be important and or necessary to integrate natural therapies with other types of medical treatments such as counseling and prescription medicine. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, so let's get some background. And first, what is Ayurveda and what is Ojas? As I mentioned, Ayurveda is also known as traditional Indian medicine. It's more than 5,000 years old. And what's, I think, special or important, unique about Ayurveda is that it's an energetic paradigm of medicine. So everything consists of energy. Okay. It's also what I really appreciate about Ayurveda is that it's really based on timeless wisdom because the herbs that are used and the, way people are suggested to eat and all this sort of thing. Uh, this is based on thousands of years of observation. And so it's timeless rather than trendy. And also, one of the concepts or precepts of Ayurveda is the idea of living in harmony with nature. Okay. So as a naturopath, we also believe that as well. All right. So then what is Ojas? So just to get a basic idea, it's kind of hard to translate Ojas as a concept from, I guess, the Western world or English language to, or from Sanskrit to the Western world or English language. So just to give you some idea of what we're talking about here. So Ojas is considered to be a vital substance. You can kind of think of it like honey, it's like something sort of colloidal, sticky, nutritive, that sort of thing. And it's considered to be the pure essence of all bodily tissues gathered together from different areas of the body. Okay, so again, this is a little bit, unusual or different from what we're used to in Western medicine. So it's formed during the production of what's called rasa in Ayurvedic medicine, or you might say the lymphatic fluid. That's kind of a rough translation. Okay, they're not exactly the same. Rough translation. Okay, and every cell and every tissue makes ojas. Okay, so it's a byproduct basically of taking in nutrition and metabolizing nutrition. So we're talking on a cellular level, we're talking on a tissue level, and we're talking on a systemic level, whole body. Okay. So the thing though is that when this substance, this honey-like substance that's the pure essence of all bodily tissues is weak, illness can happen. So there's this notion that this ojas stuff has a protective function as well as sort of a nourishing function. Okay, both. So when somebody has a good ojas, it gives them vitality, it gives them radiance, it gives them that glow that some people, talk about when somebody's really like, bouncing around with a lot of good health. It also gives them good immunity, meaning that they're protected from, infectious diseases and things like that. Okay. And so you can think of it too, like in Ayurveda, we talk about prana, which is vital force, vital energy. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the equivalent would be qi. Okay. So basically, when you have good ojas, you have vitality, radiance, glow, immunity, and it enhances and protects your prana or qi. Okay. So when ojas is diminished, on the other hand, you will lose the vitality, you will lose the glow, you lose happiness, joy, and immunity. Okay, so you'll be slumping or slogging along, essentially. Okay, so modern versions of lack of ojas or diminished ojas, the words we would probably use are burnout, stuckness, blues, lack of motivation, and maybe if you really want to get technical, medically technical, hedonia. Okay, which is like the lack of joy. Not enjoying pleasure. Okay. So why am I discussing this today? Like, why am I going to do a whole talk on this today? Well, the thing is that, I've talked to a lot of people, in my career about cleansing. And a lot of people know about cleansing, and people come in and they ask me about cleansing of all kinds, usually physical cleansing, like a liver cleanse or something like that. But, I get into other things such as like mental cleansing and emotional cleansing, spiritual cleansing as well. But the other kind of next step for a lot of people, not everybody, is that once you've cleaned out, whatever you're trying to clean out, uh, impurities through food, water, air, job related things, emotions that haven't been fully processed or whatever. Okay. Once you've gotten rid of them, then how do you rebuild in a positive way? Okay. And that's where rejuvenation and this, Ayurvedic rejuvenation and this idea of potentially rebuilding ojas, again, getting that glow back, that's an important part that I very rarely hear about from people. Like cleansing doesn't, and a lot of people, actually, I get plenty of people who come into my office who actually they're probably cleansing too much. And when you cleanse too much, actually, ironically, perhaps you can diminish your ojas if you get super strict and you're not eating anything because nothing's clean enough, and you get that sort of thing. You won't get the nutrition you need. Plus, it's a very kind of harsh, rigid, dry way to live. And that's sort of, again, counterintuitive to this more natural fluidity, golden glow type of energy that we're talking about here. Okay. So that's why I'm doing a talk today. Okay, so a little bit more on Ojas, since it's probably a new concept for a lot of people. There are two types. There's apara and there's para. Okay. Apara, and other names for this is inferior, unprocessed, or raw ojas. Okay. And apara, it moves through the body, the whole body, so it's mobile. And in the whole body, there's about one cupped handful of it, this like sticky, colloidal, honey-like substance. Okay? The para ojas, it's other names for it are superior or refined ojas, and there's only about 8 drops of it. Okay, and the 8 drops stays in the heart. Okay, so we got 8 drops of para ojas in the heart, and we've got a handful of para ojas, which floats through the body. Okay, so both types of ojas, what they do again is they protect the prana, also known as a vital force energy, or vital force or vital energy. It's it's a stabilizing type of thing. It's nutritive. It's stabilizing. It's also rich in what we call soma. Soma is like like a nutritive fluid. Again, it's one of those things that's hard to translate from Indian culture or Sanskrit. But soma again is something that gives like this sort of blissful state of consciousness. Okay, it's sort of like that. Even like a full moon. You know what I mean? Like it just it gives you that glow. In the dark night, in the dark sky. It's sort of mesmerizing. It's sort of ethereal and magical in some ways, and that sort of, again, hard to define, uh, glowy stuff is what we're talking about. Okay. So the para ojas, the 8 drops that stays in your heart, is actually, if you want to kind of link Western medicine to this, it stimulates the SA node, the center atrial node, which is responsible for the rhythm of the heart and the constant beating of the heart. So if the heart stops for some reason, then that also means that the apara ojas, right, that handful that flows through the whole body, stops. And when that happens, when you don't get ojas to your tissues and cells, then you get loss of consciousness and ultimately potentially death if it's really severe. Okay. So the soma stuff is also released during samadhi, which is like this higher state of enlightenment through meditation that some people can, access. And again, the para ojas maintains consciousness. Okay. So what are things that, now we'll start talking about, like, what are things that start to diminish ojas? Well, it might sound kind of funny, but selfishness, for example, dries out ojas. Because when people start to really focus on self too much, I mean, there's a balance of taking care of our needs and other people's needs or desires or whatever. But when we're too much about ourselves and we create this really strong border, boundary between us and other people, and it stops a natural flow. Okay, and again, when we stop this natural flow of eating well, sleeping well, living well, being, in good, really happy, reciprocal relationships, then we start to create these borders, this rigidness, this otherness, and that can stop the flow or growth production of ojas. Okay, and so what are things that enhance ojas? Well, things like mindfulness and effortless awareness, where we're not trying to control sort of circumstances or the external world or outcomes, because of our potentially limited ego. Like I was reading in one book, like just sometimes just sitting quietly and just letting yourself float. It sounds kind of, vague and funny, but when you're that peaceful and you're that in harmony with nature, where you're not trying to change or create or manipulate or alter or strive, when you're just simply in the flow of life, in the flow of nature, that's when ojas can really just start, sort of blossoming. I don't know if blossoming is exactly, but just sort of start pouring through you, flowing through you. Okay, unblocked. Okay. So, and surrender, the idea of surrender as well, spiritual surrender, where it's like, this situation may not be going according to my plan or my desire or my wish, but, maybe there's some higher consciousness or intelligence that's, moving the flow in this direction. And so I surrender to that higher intelligence, whether you want to call that nature or God or source or whatever you want to call it. And, this again allows para ojas to flow, transform into para ojas. Okay. What are other things that block the production and healthy production of ojas? Well, things like too many emotions, anxieties, responsibilities, and efforts even block this natural production, natural flow, natural nourishment, natural protection that we all potentially have access to. Okay. So, to get a little bit more sort of technical, on this slide, I'm going to talk about 4 different types of disorders of ojas. Now, again, this might be a little bit more for people who are deeper, like into medicine or deeper into Ayurveda, in which case you can probably skip to the next slide, but I'm just going to present this so that it's complete for those of you who are, into it at this level. So there's essentially 4 types of disorders of ojas. There's ojo vishramsa, ojo vyapat, also known as ojo drishti, then there's ojo kshaya, and then there's ojo vrudi. Okay, so ojas that's displaced, ojas that's disturbed, ojas that's depleted, and ojas that's increased. Okay, so so what is ojo vishramsa? Okay, or displaced ojas. Well, this is a problem with distribution of ojas by the heart due to a problem with what's called Vyana Vayu. It's a kind of circulation that's mostly related to the circulation of the heart and blood flow. Okay, so when you don't have good Vyana Vayu, then it won't circulate ojas properly. Okay, so this is more of a localized sort of disorder with ojas. Okay, and probably the mildest of these 4. Okay. So what this does is it manifests in dhatus, also known as tissues, that have weak, what they call Agni or metabolism. Now, we're not talking about, like, in a Western sense, metabolism like the thyroid that's responsible for, how fast you burn calories. It's really about it's like again, another concept that's hard to translate sometimes, but it's just like this sort of fire potential or like transformative potential. It's like, so like when cells get nutrition, they can transform that nutrition into something that's useful to continue supplying energy and building blocks to maintain that cell for proper functioning at a cellular level and higher tissue and systemic. Okay, so So what happens is that tissues that are weak, they will start to have a problem potentially with distribution of ojas. Okay. So this may result in various symptoms. Some of them could be something like loose joints or inert limbs. And if this continues and is not treated, it can lead to something more severe, which is the next level of ojo vyapat, okay, or ojo dushti, which is disturbed ojas. Okay. So ojas generally is kept, or not just kept, but keeps vata. Vata is considered to be like a wind disorder. So again, this is all Ayurveda. So I'm going to be talking about vata, pitta, kapha, which are considered imbalances of wind, fire, and earth, loosely translated. Okay. So ojas keeps vata in the colon. The colon is considered to be the seat of vata. And that's, if there's going to be vata, that's kind of where you want it to be. Okay. If it starts leaving the colon, then it'll bring wind and wind symptoms to other parts of the body, such as pain, such as you have symptoms that come and go, such as dryness. And if it goes to the mind, it can be like anxiety or fearfulness or insomnia, that sort of thing. Okay. Now, pitta, generally speaking, is supposed to stay in the small intestine. Okay. Because there's a lot of fire that's needed to transform food. And then kapha is generally supposed to stay in the chest, where you have that mucus that helps with, cooling, respiration, all this sort of thing. Okay. But when when vata leaves the colon, pitta leaves the small intestine, kapha leaves the chest, they move outward, then they'll start to bring, again, wind, fire, and, this earth quality to other tissues where it may not be so appropriate or helpful. Okay. So, for example, when vata leaves the colon and it starts to leave that boundary, it might, go into the hips, or the upper thighs or the buttocks or even the sciatic nerve. So people with vata type of disorders tend to have sciatica. Okay. Now, when kapha is another example, when kapha leaves the chest and it starts to circulate, and distribute inappropriately, it can go up into the sinuses and create sinus congestion. That heaviness, the sticky fluid mucus stuff is now in the sinuses, where normally there's not so much. Okay. Things are balanced. So what happens is when the oja starts moving inappropriately and lands in these spots, it can become toxic. And then what happens is it starts to impair tissue function. Okay, so that's again sort of first level ojas disorder. All right, so hold on a second. I have to. Okay, sorry about that. My tea was ready. Need to stay hydrated. It's pretty warm right now when I'm recording this. So. Okay, so on to disorder of ojas number 2, ojo vyapat, also known as ojo dushti. This is disturbed ojas. So this is a bit more severe than the first one, ojo vishramsa. It's also not so localized. It can be more of a systemic problem. So what happens here is ojas is disturbed by one or more doshas. So doshas, again, are vata, pitta, kapha. So wind, fire, and earth, loosely translated, okay? So the ojas can tend to take on the qualities of vata, pitta, kapha, or wind, fire, earth. So wind is more of a cold, dry energy. Fire is a hot, intense energy, and then earth is a cold, heavy energy. Okay, wet, cold, heavy, wet energy, like mud. Okay, so so this changes qualitatively ojas. So when ojas moves, it brings doshas, these imbalances with it. And so this can be, again, affect more than one tissue. It can be one or more tissues. So it starts to, expand out even more. Okay, so different examples. So if we have a kapha ojo dushti, so, too much earth, involving energy getting mixed in with the ojas here, then because it's the earth energy here, ojas will be slow and you'll have feelings of heaviness and dullness, like whether it's physical or mental, emotional. Okay. And this can lead to ojo vriddhi, which is the fourth type of disorder, okay, of increased or kind of excessive ojas. Okay. Um, so if you have, for example, vata ojo dushti, so this is too much wind energy associated with ojas, then things will become light and dry and rough. So people will potentially become emaciated or lose muscle tissue or develop osteoporosis, where the tissues start to, get depleted. Okay. And this can lead to ojo kshaya, which is ojas depletion. That's just the next level, third level here. Okay. Then, as an example, if you have pitta ojo dushti, this is where tejas is a sort of like, kind of like Agni. It's a sort of metabolic transformative fire related to ojas. Okay. And through tejas, through the, kind of transformation or nutrition, one of the side products potentially is ojas. Okay. On a good day, it's going to be ojas. Okay. So when there's too much fire, though, that means that tejas is not just going to transform nutrition into ojas, but it's going to burn up ojas. And this can lead to, because again, ojas is related to protective immunity. You can get things like autoimmune disease or infections or chronic inflammation or blood disorders. Okay. So on the next level, third level, ojo kshaya, this is depletion of ojas. So this is when ojas is either lost or wasted. And this decreases both quality and quantity of ojas. So you don't have enough of it, and the ojas you have isn't that great. So it's not really going to do the job of protecting and nourishing. Okay. So again, this is more severe than the previous two, and usually a result of untreated ojo dushti. So you can see that it's sort of like, if you kind of catch this early enough in the milder stages, like most things, it's easier to kind of turn this around. Okay, but if you let it go and let it go and let it go, then it's harder to, remedy. So at this point, it might get so bad because, again, ojas is also related to maintaining consciousness. This might be somebody passing out. This could be chest pain, palpitations, extreme fear, like panic attacks, dehydration. Again, not just like some loss of muscle or bone mass, but like pretty extensive, like pretty obvious loss of, body mass. Also mental sluggishness, this sort of thing, where, usually people at this stage look pretty sick. They can't really hide it, at this point. And then the fourth level here, and it's not, the first three are sort of a progression of one another. The fourth one is kind of stems from a different direction of ojas. So this is when, again, there's too much kapha or earth energy related ojas, and it gets heavy. And because it gets heavy and sometimes even excessive in quantity, it's not fully processed. And so you have this like unprocessed, sticky stuff floating around your body, and it's actually like blocking things rather than supporting them and nourishing them. So this can result in things like obesity or diabetes, heaviness, feeling heaviness, swelling, pain. Because again, it's just there's too much of this unprocessed sticky stuff in the body, and again, it becomes toxic at a certain point. Okay, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, hypertension, heart attack. You can see in glaucoma even. So you can see a lot of this stuff is related to central systemic disease, especially related to the heart. I mean, because again, the heart is where the drops of refined ojas lives potentially. Okay, so the first three again are sort of a progression, and the last one is like when it kind of goes the other way. But again, these are all different levels of imbalance related to ojas. Okay, so for those of you who are into that level, there you go. Okay, so what are other things that diminish ojas? So I sort of mentioned like, worries and responsibilities and, excessive things like that. Well, this is a little bit more kind of laid out for you, I guess, detailed on that. So let's just go through the list here. And you can see this guy in the picture here, he's being pulled in all directions, which is unfortunately, kind of the modern lifestyle, modern urban lifestyle. Okay. So this alone, the modern urban lifestyle, will diminish ojas over time. And you probably are not surprised by that. But let's talk about, more specific things. So activities that invoke intense negative emotions. So whatever that might be a stressful job, that might be a stressful relationship, that might be stressful news, that you read in the newspaper, online, magazines, whatever. trauma, both physical and or emotional, and unprocessed emotions related to this. So not just having the trauma, that will do it itself, but then not working through, the issues that that trauma, brings to, the mind, body, spirit. Okay. So, these unprocessed emotions are sort of like emotional toxins in a way. You can think about it that way. So activities that spur on perfectionism. So including too much cleansing, which I alluded to, I believe, in the first slide. So again, when people get too rigid, usually that's a sign of too much fire or pitta, first of all. But the other thing is that when people get rigid like that, it's a sign that they have a very, usually a very strong mind, but they're trying to conform the world, conform nature into its very probably limited mindset of how things should be or optimally are or whatever. And they can be a little bit, obsessive about this sometimes or whatever. But they're not thinking about, and they may not have, most of us don't have, the wisdom or insight to know exactly how the way things are playing out, the way the flow of life, evolution, nature, and all of this stuff, how this contributes to the greater good. Most of us don't have that level of awareness, okay? And so when we try to, again, fit life, this, very mysterious thing we call life into some, more rigid system, box frame, then that's a lot of effort to either block life out or to keep it, under wraps, in a certain style or container. Okay. And as we'll talk about, effort, doing things that require too much effort can burn out ojas. Okay. So what else? Anything that causes high levels of stress or worry. So that could be anything. That could be your dog. That could be your kid. That could be the weather. That could be traffic, So learning how to manage that can be helpful in protecting ojas. Activities that require too much effort instead of, again, following a natural flow. So sometimes we do have to make an effort, but if we're efforting all the time and we never give ourselves just a chance to sit and be, that's a problem. Okay, that will burn people out. That'll burn ojas out. Okay, disturbed digestion or deficient nutrition. So maybe you're eating well and eating cleanly, clean, healthy, nourishing foods, but maybe your digestion's a wreck, and so you can't digest your food, and because you can't digest your food properly, you can't absorb the nutrition. If you can't absorb the nutrition, then you can't produce, sufficient quality or quantity of ojas. Okay. Then on the other side, maybe you're just not eating enough, or maybe again you're too restricted in what you're eating, and you're not getting enough nutrition to support production of ojas to build body and mind. Okay. Chronic diseases, whether physical or emotional, typically, like at some point, there gets to be, some sort of deficiency related to that. Okay. And that can be another reason why ojas burns out. Genetics can play a part in this. So some people genetically will have like a less ojas developing or lower quality ojas developing. And this can even be related to when a mother's pregnant, her health and lifestyle during the pregnancy can affect the ojas of the child. Okay. So what else? Excessive exercising, really running yourself into the ground with that can diminish ojas, and also sexual activity. Because again, if you watch some of my other videos that, there's sort of this stepping staircase of nutrition. Nutrition comes in the body and it nourishes, the first layers of like plasma, and that's probably a better word for rasa rather than lymphatic fluid. I should go back and change that. So I'll change that. If I remember, hopefully, there's like plasma, and then there's blood, and then there's, like muscle tissue, and also the very end of the line is the sexual tissue. So, if you're losing energy or fluid through too much sexual activity, ejaculation or orgasm or whatever, you will actually diminish your ojas. So Ayurveda actually has recommendations on how often, to even, have sex or, go through orgasm, but people who are sort of striving to have multiple orgasms in one session or many sessions, like that again will diminish your vital force. Okay, according to Ayurveda. So it's the messenger. I'm sure some people won't be into that or like that, but there you go. You have the information. You do with it what you want. So exposure to loud or harsh sounds, which again, if you live in an urban area, if you're surrounded by, a bunch of gizmos, technology these days. I mean, it's all about, sometimes you can't even watch your show or movie or whatever. There's, every few minutes, like some ad comes on and it's like the sound gets louder and it's really animated and all these colors and people talking loudly. And all this leads to overstimulation and a burnout of ojas. Okay. So related to that, overexposure to news and social media. Okay. So again, all of these things you're taking, even if you're just like reading whatever social media is your favorite, okay? And you're scrolling on there, doom scrolling, for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however long, you're still taking in the light of that gadget. You're still taking in, the colors potentially, even if you've turned to black and white, you're still taking in the impressions of the words and the thoughts and the feelings of the whatever. And that's still all stimulating the mind, even though most of us live in it all day long, you know, day in, day out. You have to remind yourself that 100 years ago, we had none of these gizmos. Okay. And the human brain, the human body has not evolved nearly as quickly as technology has. And so it takes a toll on the nervous system and being engaged with these things. So even doing like a, you know, daily digital detox or day off from the gizmos or, a week off if you really want to go for it, to really, sort of come off that, that might be a way to, again, keep the ojas in check. Um, what else? Too much time. Okay, I talked about that. Imbalanced destructive relationships. Well, that's another one. I mean, again, again, right now, it's sort of, trendy to, be your, like the word situationship exists, right? Which is sort of like a casual, usually not many rules, but, it can be like, um, provoke a lot of anxiety for some people. Like for some people, it might be like, oh, well, I'm not expected to show up in any sort of way, so I can just be myself, and that works. Other people, this will cause anxiety because there's no potentially consistency, or you don't know where you stand, or this or that. Okay, so that potentially, again, not for everybody, but that might be a cause of anxiety for some people. And then you have some people, they might be in a committed relationship, but unfortunately, committed relationship is sort of a one-way street. In which case, they're overgiving and not receiving enough through that relationship. And then that alone, like constantly giving to people, um, will burn them out over time. Um, so, you have to figure out, regardless of the label of it, is this relationship, supportive and not diminishing or stressing you out? Okay. Um, so, other things like staying up late at night or insufficient rest or sleep. Again, it's important to give yourself time just to let, your nutrition status and your energy levels get back up to par. Overworking or overbooking your schedule. People who never, take an afternoon off or a day off, it's like they're always overbooking this. And even when they go on vacation, it's like they get up early and they've got the whole day planned and then they crash at night and they get up and do it again. That's a whole style, but the thing is that over time that will diminish ojas. What else? Not having a regular schedule or routine. Now I have a whole video on this. So if you want to get into that, it's called Ayurvedic Dinacharya or daily routine and why that's really important. So you can check out that whole video if you want to. Okay. Also traveling and commuting too much. Because it creates it generates a lot of wind or vata for people when they're traveling and commuting. So that could be a problem as well. And then other thing like overexposure to infectious agents and environmental toxins. Now, some of this again might be related to travel. Like I have a patient who was a Peace Corps volunteer in South Africa, and she ended up picking up some parasites that I ended up helping her get rid of. But she was a young woman who was having all this digestive issues and joint pain, and it was because she picked up something on her trip. And there can also be environmental toxins, so this could be occupational as well. Like I have patients who work in manufacturing, and a lot of them come in with all sorts of toxic or like automotive, mechanical stuff, and they have a lot of toxins related to their work that builds up in their system. So that will also diminish ojas as well. Okay, so you can see that again, a lot of this is related to modern busy lifestyle here. Okay, so what are activities that increase ojas? Well, so again, this talk is mostly from the perspective that most people probably need to increase ojas because of modern living. Okay. Now, again, some people need to be careful of this. And at the end of me talking about how to increase ojas through activities and nutrition, I am going to talk about considerations and where this may not be appropriate. Okay, so just stick with me here and we'll get through the whole thing. So, okay, what are activities that increase ojas? Well, hobbies that bring joy. So, and that's actually a question I ask every patient who comes in my office is like, what do you do for fun? And a lot of people can't answer that question. And when I ask them, they seem sort of, they're sort of like, wow, I don't even know. It's been so long. And that's the thing is like not having something that brings you joy, like even if it's like having a pet that you connect with every day, or going for a walk, or just listening to your music or whatever. All of that, because it gives you a chance to just sort of be in harmony and sort of this light, happy place, even if it's just for temporarily for a few minutes, but that's still going to let that ojas start to build and grow and distribute properly. Cultivating art along those same lines, cultivating art and beauty and harmony and fun, these sorts of things where like these people in the photo, they're just sort of jumping and they're excited. And, again, maybe this was just a minute that the photo was taken or, created, but that's what we're looking for. Even a few minutes of that, even when we're really busy and we have a lot of responsibilities. Again, balancing all that with lightness and joy and fun and beauty is the way to go. So other things that are, again, along the same lines, uplifting music, art, show, that kind of stuff. Positive supportive relationships. Is this relationship really, benefiting my life? And is it good both ways? Are we both happy with this relationship? And what it brings to both of us. We talked about excessive exercise diminishing ojas, but gentle, moderate yoga or exercise, like or walking in nature, these sorts of things build ojas. So again, doing gently, but not overdoing and pushing and again forcing, that sort of thing. Other things like prayer, meditation, quiet reflection time. Also making sure you have enough free time. Like you might even have to schedule it. Like, okay, this hour I'm doing nothing. I can just follow my nose and go wherever, or maybe it's an afternoon, or maybe it's a day, or maybe it's a week. I have a friend who just went on sabbatical. She's a teacher, so I was like, enjoy it. And she was talking about, oh, she needs to be productive. I said, like, just, she's been through some rough years. She was head of her department during the pandemic. I'm like, just call the pieces of your soul back to yourself. I mean, if that's all that's plenty to accomplish, if you want to accomplish something in the next few months while you're off. But, again, even her, she was talking the same talk of like, oh, I need to be productive and da, da, da. Hold on, I got hiccups here. Let me try to get rid of them. Hold on. Yeah, so that was weird. I don't know, maybe my friend who's on sabbatical is thinking about me. I don't know why she would. She's probably having too much fun. So, oh, here it goes. Let's see if I talk slower, maybe it'll go away. I thought I got rid of it. A deep breath. Okay. Okay, so what else? Making sure we have enough free time. Then we have your proper rest and sleep. Yeah, the opposite is true. It will decrease ojas. Also, Marma therapy might be a nice idea for some people. This is Ayurvedic acupressure. I've taught all the Marma points, 107 of them. All the videos are on the my Marma therapy playlist. You can check them out. Specifically, if you're new to Marma therapy, I would check out my Marma therapy daily sequence for balance. It's just 5 points you can do. It takes like, a few minutes, but this is something I use to actually help patients who are like literally coming into my office with panic attacks. And within, I teach them and do it with them. And even after a few minutes, like you can see their energy shifting and they're becoming more balanced. So something like that is a practice, self-care technique might be helpful. There's also body oil massage for some people. That's Ayurvedic Abhyanga. I have a whole video on that if you want to check that out. Um, some people have literally called it like miraculous. So, I mean, and these are very strong words, but even after one application or one, doing of it, they just feel so much better. And it's really good for the nervous system, especially if you have a lot of vata. So you can check that out. There's also like scalp, hand, or foot massage. I do have a video on Ayurvedic foot reflexology if you want to check that out. Also, again, we're talking about living in harmony with nature. So, do you have a daily type of rhythm or schedule like the dinacharya video I was talking about, or a weekly rhythm or a seasonal rhythm? If you're all over the place, if your schedule's all over the place, that's going to create stress and worry and, again, increase ojas, or not, sorry, decrease ojas. And so that'll be a problem over time. Um, dressing appropriately for the season or weather, not dressing to cool off during the warm months and dressing to warm up during the cool months so that you maintain some equilibrium. And again, without stressing out your body too much. And then there's also like, honoring solar and lunar rhythms. And so that's sort of getting into a whole nother realm. I am also a Vedic astrologer, ancient Indian astrologer. So I have a whole channel called Light Vedic Astrology. So if you want to get into solar, lunar rhythms and all that, I would check out that channel. Probably it's a little bit beyond the medical stuff. But, it's like, even if we're thinking about like, the times of solstice, usually it's either the longest day or the shortest day of the year, depending on where you are in the world. And so it's going to get cooler typically or warmer. I mean, unless you're at the equator. And so it's just like honoring that. Like some people, like when it gets cold and the days get dark, we're supposed to slow down a bit, if we're following nature. It's like we're meant to sort of hibernate a little bit. But some people, they want to do more. Kind of like my friend who's was going on sabbatical and talking about like he's needing to be productive. And I was like, that's not really what a sabbatical is for, is it? Um, I mean, don't you get a chance to rest? I mean, that's sort of like the big, gift, right, of being a teacher. Is like a lot of teachers still get like summers off and then they get a sabbatical once in a while, after every few years. So I was like, I would enjoy it. I wouldn't worry about being productive. But I have a different perspective, I guess, than most. So anyway, you get the gist here, I think, of a lot of the lifestyle related things that can be shifted to help increase ojas, to again bring back vitality, bring back radiance, bring back joy of living, and bring back immunity as well, balance and harmony. Okay, so there are also foods that help to increase ojas. Now, some of these, even if we start to try to get, one or two a day into the diet, that tends to help. Some of these, not all of them, but some of them are high calorie type of items here. Like we have some avocado and bananas and cashews and stuff like that. So if you start loading up a lot of the high calorie ones, you might gain weight. And I guess if you really go for it, you might actually push yourself in the direction of having increased ojas. But if you just, take a few of these and, maybe some of the teas and that sort of thing. But also, if you look at this whole list, what you'll see is that these are foods that are fresh, um, that they're nutritive, that they're gentle, that they're balancing. You're not seeing like super spicy anything on here. You're not seeing fried food on here. You're not seeing super sweet food on here. Um, these are things that will, bring vitality, and also, for the most part, they're fresh, whole. And I would say if you can, you have access to it, organic food, so that like you're basically it's almost like eating sunlight and rainwater and, you know, a summer breeze, through your food, right? Um, Yeah, so that's what we're looking for, essentially. But these are some of the ones, and I'll just go through the list here. So, fresh, whole, organic food in general. Almonds, especially if they're soaked and peeled. Angelica tea is very nice, it's very calming. Asparagus, avocados, bananas. So, again, they're like nourishing, gentle foods. Cardamom, a slightly warming spice there. Cashews, especially soaked. Chyavanprash, that's an herbal nutritive paste that's you find in India all over the place. Um, so it's tasty. I know even my dog likes to lick it off the spoon. So yeah, but it's pretty sweet. So again, if you're watching your weight, that may not be one for you. Cinnamon, and again, you have to take this in accordance with other. Um, conditions you might have. Okay, but this is a general list for people. Coconut flakes unsweetened, dates fresh, especially or soaked in water overnight rather than dry. The reason why is again, most people, if their ojas is diminished, they will have higher vata or pitta, so fire or wind. If they have too much kapha, then again, they don't need to increase their ojas, really. They probably need to detoxify instead, but I'll talk more about that on the next slide. Fennel is a spice or tea. Figs, fresh is better or soaked. The dried ones soaked overnight in water to again, balance the wind, balance our energy. Fresh, sweet, juicy fruits helpful. Garlic cooked, ghee, clarified butter, unless you have a cholesterol problem. Hibiscus tea is helpful. Honey, if you don't have diabetes, jasmine tea, milk, whether cows, goats, or almond or coconut, any of these potentially. Just make sure it's not loaded with sugar or chocolate or something like that. Mung bean, so that's an Indian legume. Oat straw tea. It's really good for the bones. Actually, there's a lot of nutrition in it. That's why big animals like horses and cows can have such strong bones, even though they're vegetarian for the most part. Um, Onions cooked, pumpkin seeds, raisins soaked overnight, rose tea, saffron or safflower tea, sesame seeds or tahini, sweet potato, sunflower seeds, tofu, urad, which is another Indian legume, vanilla, walnuts, white basmati rice, zucchini. So you can see it's like, um, nothing extreme here, but just soft and gentle and nourishing. That's what we're looking for. To create not just like as a type of food, but as a type of activity. Yeah. Okay, so when do we not necessarily want to build ojas, or when should we consider it first before we dive into building ojas? If that sounds attractive to you. Well, some of these things might be more apparent now that we've talked about the different types of ojas disturbances. So, if we're talking about excess ojas, then people who are dealing with obesity, atherosclerosis, severe heart disease, diabetes, these are signs that there's too much kapha in the body and there's too much kind of heavy, sticky stuff that's going to make the ojas heavier and stickier and then create problems. Okay. So the body won't be able to process all of this. Okay. Other things like chronic swelling and pain, like joints or eyes, glaucoma, chronic liver disease or kidney disease, because again, if these organs are responsible for detoxing the body, so if they're not, in good shape, then if we start to build ojas, it might eventually overwhelm these organs. Uh, or again, if they're not functioning properly, then even you know. Maybe more of the heavier foods are related to, which is not the activities, but the heavier foods might be a problem. Um, and then also chronic skin conditions. Usually, skin conditions from both a naturopathic and Ayurvedic point of view. That's usually an indication that there's some toxicity in the body, and or the detoxification organs like liver and kidneys are not functioning properly. And so again, that's like it's going to back up the whole system, and things won't be processed, adequately. Anybody who has known or probable toxicity, from where they live or where they work or that sort of thing, activities in their life, active infections, that's not generally a time you want to build ojas. You want to take care of that infection first. Anybody who's physically, mentally, or emotionally unstable, you got to watch out here, because if they're really unstable, you need to stabilize them first before you start really putting them on a, strong ojas building type of plan. And again, anybody who has high kapha, so whether that's acutely or constitutionally, building ojas may not be what they need. They probably need more movement and um, that sort of thing. Like they may not be exercise. They might be on the other side where they're not exercising enough, or they're eating too many heavy foods, um, or they might have too many heavy emotions. They have a hard time processing and that sort of thing. Okie doke. All right, so there you go. Ojas and ojas building and Ayurvedic rejuvenation for vitality and immunity for you. So, as always, thanks so much for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. I do have a couple books on natural medicine that are available on Amazon if you ever want to pick up a copy. I do have that other YouTube channel on Vedic astrology, ancient Indian astrology, if that's interesting to you. And I do have an online art gallery at fineartamerica.com. So you've got some of these things listed for you here in case any of this is interesting or helpful to you. But as always, I really hope that you got a lot out of this talk and it opened up your eyes to, again, a lot of it's lifestyle. And I would even say, like, even though I have a slide on foods, if the lifestyle is not, in check, if the lifestyle is not in balance, then, no amount of cardamom or fennel seed is really going to take care of that for you. It will help. But again, most of this ojas building stuff is more about lifestyle. So there's a lot you can do. That's the good news, is there's a lot you can do potentially to help yourself. All right. So until the next one, everybody, take good care. Namaste.